Hey everyone, welcome to the review of the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K Max, which is an awful name, but that's not what's important here. And let's jump straight into the price. Here in Canada, it's $75, and in the US, it's $55. Next on the list is a remote, which is compact and easy to use with a single hand. The size is very similar to previous Amazon Fire TV remotes, but the number of buttons has increased. Now there are app shortcut launch buttons, which will vary based on app availability and where you live. I'm not a fan of these type of launch buttons. It's annoying when they accidentally get pressed. Instead, they should have been buttons you can customize and program. There's also a new dedicated live TV button that will take you into the live section of the software on the operating system, which I'll go over later. One important item is the button, which I'll cover shortly. The remote also has a built-in IR blaster functionality like the previous Fire TV remotes. So if your TV, soundbar, or AV system is compatible, you can control volume and power for those devices from this one remote. If you don't want to use the physical remote, a Fire TV remote app is available for smartphones that works well and is incredibly fast and responsive. The remote itself takes two AAA batteries, which are included in the box. The actual media player stick is rather small at about 10 centimeters, not including the HDMI port at the tip, with the Amazon logo on top. One end has the port to connect HDMI onto your TV or monitor, and on another side is the port for micro USB power, unfortunately not USB-C. There's no factory reset button on the media player, so to wipe it you'll have to do it from the system settings in the software. The USB power wire is about 5 feet long. Included in the box is an HDMI extender, which gives you an additional 11 centimeters of flexible length if plugging in the media player directly to your TV is too difficult. This media player does support Wi-Fi 6, which is one of the main selling points of this media player. The only other mainstream media player to support Wi-Fi 6 is the Apple TV 4K second generation media streamer. A link to that review is in the video description. So just to keep in mind that the Wi-Fi 6 adapter is going to be useless in most scenarios, especially if you're using it for internet streaming services like Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime Video. It won't really help in that regard. Where Wi-Fi 6 adapter might help is if you have some large files on a Plex server, for example, and you're transferring data over your internal network to stream it back on this media player. On that note about networking is that there is a sold separately Ethernet adapter for this media player, but it caps at 100 megabits per second, which means the Ethernet adapter, even though it's a wired connection, is slower than the Wi-Fi 6 adapter in this media player. So rule of thumb, don't buy the Ethernet adapter unless your Wi-Fi signal is weak. Also for connectivity, the media player does use Bluetooth 5.0, so you can have it for private content listening with Bluetooth headsets. Bluetooth also allows connecting game controllers from Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, PS4 and PS5. I have videos showing how to connect any of those controllers to this media player. You can find those videos in my channel. It has 8 gigs of internal storage and is a quad-core processor with 2 gigs of RAM, which doesn't mean much since the actual performance matters instead. I'll be pushing this media player quite heavily, and I'll be demonstrating its performance when I cover the software, which is pretty much coming up. The media player and the remote only come in a simple black color, as you see here. Okay, so now switching over to the software side of things, but I want to cover first that in terms of audio, this media streamer supports Dolby Atmos, Dolby Digital Plus, and for video, it does support 4K at 60 frames per second, Dolby Vision, HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and HLG. Now, for the operating system itself, it's running Android 9 with a Fire TV OS skin overlay, so it's possible to get other screen launchers if you dig around enough, but we'll stick with the Prime launcher. And when it comes to general video quality, if the source is something from like say Netflix, Disney Plus, or Amazon Prime, and the source is 4K HDR and your TV is pretty decent in terms of picture quality, the picture output is incredibly sharp, vivid, and it looks just simply amazing. So starting with the far left, what you'll have is profiles, and each profile you have different recommended Prime content based on your watching interest, as well as whatever apps you have installed will display only for you instead of the other profiles. You can also have a kid profile to make it more kid-friendly and restrict certain adult content. The home screen is basically where you have a lot of your most recently watched content, and majority of it is Prime content. One of the most annoying things about the home screen is ads. Even though you paid for this media player, yes, there are ads here, which is really annoying and a put-off. You'll have recently viewed apps, and again, majority of the other content is just Prime. One section for Netflix, Prime. You get the idea. They'll have some featured apps and games, but again, majority of the recommended content is Prime, and it's pretty excessive in your face. So really catered towards Prime content and advertisements, so you won't really spend too much time on the home screen most likely. Switching over to Find, this is where you can literally search for anything. Now there's two ways to search for stuff. One is by using this function here and typing it out on a digital on-screen keyboard, or the other method is to use the button on your remote control, which is the much preferred method. And you can search for content from many of the popular streaming media player apps, not just Prime content. So for example, I'm gonna use the button on the remote instead of the search function here. The Simpsons. And there you have it. So if I open it up, then of course it's gonna tell me to, hey, watch this in Disney Plus. But you can also search for apps. You're not limited to just media content. So for example, File Explorer. And there you have some recommended apps. So because there is the full-fledged version in this media streamer, you can actually use it to control some of your smart home products. So you might not see it in the background of my TV because it's pretty dark right now, but if I were to tell it to turn on my lights, it'll do it. So for example, turn on the basement TV lights. Okay. You might not be able to see it on the camera, but everything on the background has now turned green because my Philips Hue light bulbs have turned on. Turn off the basement TV lights. And it's pretty fast and responsive. You can use it for other queries such as, what is the weather today?
In Brampton,
So switching over to the live section, it's basically a collection of live streaming apps. It could be TV and sports for the most part. If you press the TV button on the remote control, you'll get shortcutted and sent straight to this section here. Switching over just a little bit to the far side, you'll see there's an App Store section. Tapping on it will take you to the actual App Store. So you can actually browse around for apps. There's a ton of them. There's a lot to go through. But here's the strange thing. You can't search for apps in the App Store section. The easiest way to search is by using the Find ability or just use the button on your remote control. So it's a little strange they did that, but it usually works when I'm trying to search for something. And before we switch over to performance of media player apps, which I will definitely get into, the last thing I want to cover is the system settings menu. The reason being is because a lot of this stuff is generic. Yes, I agree. But there's some cool things like equipment control. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, the remote control does support an IR blaster, so you can add additional controls for your home theater system, for example, if they are compatible with the remote control. Another one is remotes and Bluetooth devices. This is where you would connect, some other stuff like Amazon Fire TV remotes if you have additional ones, as well as gaming controllers, which I mentioned earlier in this video. One of the coolest things here is, of course, in preferences, which you wouldn't expect. You have some parental controls in here, but you also have something called data monitoring. And data monitoring, basically, if you turn it on, is where you can set data caps and limits in streaming quality. If maybe your ISP provider has given you a certain data cap, maybe let's say 200 gigs per month, this is what you want to set and adjust to not go over your data usage per month. Overall, general performance is smooth and amazing. It's incredibly fast and responsive. As I showed you earlier, I can snap through things really quickly, but I just want to open up some of the more heavier media player apps to really demonstrate how good this is. So Netflix is usually one of the most heaviest media player apps on any media player, but as you can see, it's lightning fast. I'm going to switch over to Disney Plus as well because that's yet another very heavy media player app that's usually available on most devices. And there you have it, opened up rather quickly. One thing I do want to mention in particular that's pretty unique is that I have Hulu, and you'll notice the icon's a little strange. That's because I live here in Canada and I was able to sideload the app. So yes, because it is running Android at the core of this media player, you can sideload apps. I have another video explaining how to get that done. A link to that video is in the video description. The most unique situation for me in terms of media player playback is Plex. Prime Video is pretty much set in stone that it's going to be good. You've seen a lot of the content on the home screen. YouTube works just fine. You can play 4K content. But Plex is where there's a bit of a mystery to me. So the reason Plex is a mystery to me is because for the good part, it can play H.264 and H.265 codec files in MKV and MP4 file format, and it plays 720p and 1080p files just fine, and most 4K files. The strange issue I face is playing 4K MKV files with very heavy H.265 compression. Other Fire TV sticks that I've reviewed, links to those are on my channel, do come with a slower Wi-Fi 5 adapter. This one has Wi-Fi 6, but they play the video that's heavily compressed in H.265 for a few seconds, buffer, play, and repeat. This media player cannot play it at all. It's very strange. I'm not sure why. It's more heavy in processing power and has a Wi-Fi 6 adapter, but it can't play that heavily compressed H.265 4K file. Where the Wi-Fi 6 adapter shines is these raw video file formats I have here. They're 4K files in H.264 compression. The unique thing about these files is that they're raw videos from my camera that I'm recording right now. They play back in 150 megabits per second. That's a very high bit rate. The Ethernet adapter that's sold separately cannot handle playing this file because the bit rate's too high. That's why Wi-Fi 6 is better than the Ethernet adapter. And as you can see, it's playing it back. Yes, it does buffer, but every single other Fire TV media player that I've used, including the Fire TV Cube, which has very heavy processing power, cannot play this at all. So this is a true testament to show that the Wi-Fi 6 adapter works fine and actually works well as intended. But again, I can't figure out why I can play this massive file and not that heavily compressed H.265 file, whereas the other Fire TV devices could, even if it's only just for a few seconds. So what I'm playing now is Asphalt 8. As you can see, it does not have the best graphics by any means, but it's a pretty graphic intensive game for mobile devices like smartphones, because it was originally released on mobile devices. This frame rate is a lot smoother than it was on previous Fire TV sticks, that is for sure. And is it the best game you play in terms of performance on a device? No, it'll still be perform better on a smartphone device, but this performs the best it ever has on any Fire TV stick, which kind of shows, why Amazon is touting that this is the most powerful Fire TV stick to date, not just the Wi-Fi 6 adapter, but in terms of just general processing power. So I'm using this game right now with a PlayStation 5 controller. Of course, you're not going to get that amazing dual haptic feedback technology. In fact, it's not even vibrating at all, but the controller works just fine, and you can use those Xbox controllers as well if you really want to get that full, better gaming experience. So, should you get this media player? Should you check it out? Absolutely, it's rock solid at its price point. Fast performance, fast Wi-Fi for internal network traffic. You have Alexa's integration. It works well overall. Although there are some caveats. For example, having ads in a media player that you paid for is kind of unacceptable. Also, the excessive push for Prime content on the home screen is still applicable here, as it has been in pretty much every single Fire TV device ever released. If you want to see the written version of this review, you can find a link to it in my website in the video description, as well as links to my social networks. Subscribe, hit the like button, and thanks for watching.